think of Vicksburg, you think of trenches, a town besieged, but perhaps the battle was over before it started, settled at a more obscure fight at Champion Hill. We'll talk to the author of Champion Hill, Decisive Battle for Vicksburg, Dr. Timothy B. Smith, when we return on Civil War Talk Radio.
Deep in their split-level castle, the gallant Swiss knights plan their audacious quest to eliminate Tillamook cheese.
Pay attention. I have here... Hans, will you stop slashing? Sorry. I have here my plan to penetrate the very heart of the Tillamook. Thank you. To eliminate their unacceptably delicious cheese. Now, as you can see on this tapestry, the attack routes are embroidered...
You embroidered?
Well, the maidens did the actual sewing.
What's this brown thing?
The cheese vault, of course.
Tillamook's not in a vault, it's in supermarkets.
Oh, petty detail. Now we steal the cheese. Steal the cheese? Yes, idiot! Ow! And then place the blocks of cheese here.
And what about the shreds and slices?
What?
Tillamook also comes in shreds and slices.
But my plan is to use blocks of cheese to build an armoured escape wagon.
Can't help that.
We could leave the shreds and
Well,
slices...
what's the point of stealing it if we don't steal all of it?
Roll up the tapestry, men. I must contemplate.
Come on.
And so the knights rethink their action plan, and all because Tillamook is award-winning cheddar, farmer-owned since 1909,
1909? It's like yesterday.
clearly worth stealing, and comes in shreds and slices.
Answer the President's call to service.
As an AmeriCorps member, I know that Americans everywhere are helping each other, showing strength of character.
As a Senior Corps volunteer, I know that Americans are showing kindness and compassion.
As an AmeriCorps member, I see plenty of American spirit and enthusiasm.
Together, we make America strong.
Together, we make America great.
Find out how you can serve at nationalservice.org.
It's your world. It's your chance to make it better.
Apply online at nationalservice.org.
World Talk Radio, bringing the world to you.
To reach a show host or guest during the live show, dial toll-free in North America 866-613-1612. Or if outside the USA and Canada, dial 001-858-268-3068.
Welcome back to Civil War Talk Radio. I'm Jerry Prokopovich, talking today with Tim Smith, National Park Service Ranger at the Shiloh National Military Park, and also the author of several books, including Champion Hill, Decisive Battle for Vicksburg. Tim, let's switch gears. We talked in our first section here about Shiloh and the life of the Park Service personnel at Shiloh and the fascination of that battlefield.
Yeah.
But you've written a very interesting book on the Battle of Champion Hill. So the obvious question is why Champion Hill and not Shiloh?
Well, I've got a long story behind that, too.
We've still got 40 minutes, so fire away.
I'll give you the short version.
Okay.
Once again, I was in graduate school, this time at Ole Miss. I got my Ph.D. from Mississippi State, but I went to Ole Miss before that, got a bachelor's and master's, which is kind of interesting if you're from Mississippi. That's, you just don't do that, but I did. I had always heard of Champion Hill and been fascinated by it, but hadn't done a lot of study. But Dr. David Sansing, some of the listeners out there may know of him. He's like the dean of Mississippi historians. He was retired by then, but got to know him pretty well and took some classes under him and so on. But he told me one day, he said, Tim, I've been working on thinking about doing something on Champion Hill, and said, I'm just not going to have time to do it. He was starting at that point to write a history for the university, which was celebrating its sesquicentennial, 150 years. And so he got heavily involved in that, and he said, look, I'm just going to hand Champion Hill off to you and let you do it. And, I took it and ran with it, and that was, probably, I don't know how many years ago that was, but it was about a 10-year effort to write and edit and find a publisher and all of that, and it's been worth it, though. So it turned out quite well. I think I was happy with the way the book looked, and especially the maps in it and so on. The publisher, Savage Beatty, did a great job with it.
It does have some excellent maps, Champion Hill, Decisive Battle for Vicksburg, and I do recommend it to our listeners who want to understand this relatively obscure but certainly important battle. Give us a little context for Champion Hill. This takes place in the Vicksburg campaign. Our listeners all know where Vicksburg is, but set the stage a little bit for this battle, if you could.
Well, it is the decisive battle for Vicksburg, and depending upon where you place Vicksburg, of course, in importance in the Civil War, it to some people, me included, and a lot better historians than me, Ed Barse and Richard McMurray and Terry Winchell and so on, also believe that it's decisive battle of the Civil War because it turned the tails at Vicksburg, and of course Vicksburg played that major role in the Civil War. But it comes on May the 16th, 1863. Grant crossed the river, of course, in late April 29th, 30th, that time span, and fights the battle just inland at Port Gibson on May the 1st. But then Grant begins to march inland, and he fights a couple of small battles at Raymond and Jackson. And at that point, he turns toward Vicksburg, of course. And Pemberton has come out to meet him. They meet on May the 16th, and there the dramatic battle is fought.
So the Yankees are heading westward towards Vicksburg.
They're headed toward Vicksburg to envelop the place, and Pemberton has come out to try to stop them. Of course, it's a little more complicated than that. You've got not only Pemberton deciding what to do, you've got Joseph E. Johnston in theater who's telling Pemberton to do something else, and of course you're getting messages from Jefferson Davis in Richmond telling Pemberton to do something else. So Pemberton's kind of in a no-win situation almost, but he gets caught just right there at Baker's Creek, and Grant pounds him almost into submission. He does get away, though, of course, fights a small battle at Big Black River Bridge the next day, and then turns tail and heads into Vicksburg.
Well, it's one of the themes that comes out of this book is that the Confederate command was not a smoothly running machine by any means.
Not by any means, no.
You mentioned you've got Davis and Johnston giving conflicting orders to Pemberton. Any other problems they had?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Not only higher up. In fact, I believe it was Richard McMurray in his two great rebel armies talked about a good leader and what it takes to be a good leader. And that was one of the things that he mentioned was to be able to get along with not only his superiors but also his subordinates. So Pemberton's having a lot of trouble with Johnston and Davis above him, but he's also having some major trouble with his division commanders. There's no corps system in the Confederate Army at that time in the Vicksburg campaign. So, in fact, Pemberton will fight the battle with 3 divisions, Stevenson, Loring, and John Bowen. And 2 of the 3 division commanders will disobey orders, outright disobey orders during the battle. Which how that would have turned the battle, who knows? You know, we can't prophesy and decide what would have happened if something else would have taken place. But 2 of the 3 division commanders do disobey direct orders from Pemberton, and it goes even deeper than that. He's having trouble with the brigade commanders. Lloyd Tillman, the famous Lloyd Tillman, of course, had been relieved just the day or 2, I believe, before the battle, and Loring steps up to the plate for him. Loring is Tillman's division commander, and basically tells Pemberton, you know, look, if he goes, I go, that type stuff, and got Tillman reinstated for the battle. And of course, it's at the Battle of Champion Hill that Tillman is killed in. So there's tons of problems that Pemberton's got.
Now they're facing a Union army. They're defending and again facing toward the east, and to oversimplify, there are 3 roads heading in the general direction of Vicksburg.
Right.
You've got the Jackson Road, the Middle Road, and the Raymond Road. And the Union's advancing on all 3 prongs of the fork.
Exactly.
And it looks like the rebels, to win, have to somehow stop them or defeat one of the prongs in detail.
Right.
Well, I enjoyed reading this book partly because if I read another book on Gettysburg, I may just explode.
And
I guess it's true of many of our listeners. It's entertaining to read, but we know who's going to win.
Right. Exactly.
We can read about Antietam, and no matter how many times you say, Mac, put your men in, put them all in.
Right.
He's not going to do it. You know how it's going to end every time. I'm sitting here reading about Champion Hill and seeing the Union forces attacking, and there's that center road with a crossroads, and if the Confederates hold it, they can escape to the west. If they don't hold it, if the Union can break through and get behind them, they could cut off the whole army.
Which is exactly what they did.
And I'm reading the book, turning page after page, saying, "Oh wow, the North is just overwhelming them. That's how they're going to win this battle." I do know it's a Union victory. I guess I can spoil the ending that much, but I don't really know the course of the battle that well. So I'm watching the Union forces overwhelm S.D. Lee and his men, and then suddenly there's this big turnaround.
Yeah.
What happened then?
Well, that's a result of John Bowen, finally obeying orders from Pemberton. The Jackson Road and the Mill Road come together at that crossroads. And it is that crossroads that Pemberton has to hold in order for the Confederate Army to escape across Baker's Creek, so flooded Baker's Creek. So Stevenson's division is holding that position, and Pemberton realizes he needs help on that left wing out there, so he orders Bowen and the majority of Loring's division to move forward, and they just flat say no. We're not coming. We got Federals on our front, and we're going to fight them right here. Finally, Bowen does come up, and that's when he makes that absolutely magnificent attack with his two brigades there, Cockrell and Greene. And I think it was Ed Barr said it best. They bored a hole in the Federal Army, and they began to basically sweep around the flanks of Bowen's division, and they had to turn around and bore a hole back out. And they barely got out, but the battle does seesaw back and forth over those crossroads, which you can still, of course, go out there today and see the crossroads, and you can't get up on Champion Hill. That's privately owned. And in fact, the cone of Champion Hill is gone. They sold that in the 1930s for road gravel. They mined it, but otherwise, it's still pretty much intact battlefield. And the Civil War Preservation Trust is doing a lot to try to preserve that, and other people as well. But it's a magnificent battlefield.
Now, that's not a national military park.
No, it's not. It's a National Historic Landmark.
Okay. Is there a state park like at Perryville or anything there?
No, there's absolutely nothing there. In fact, there are only, I believe it's 2 monuments on the battlefield, maybe 3.
Really?
One is the National Historic Landmark Monument. One is a monument put up by Lloyd Tillman's sons in 1907, 08. It slips my mind right now. But in the first decade of the 1900s, at his death site. And otherwise, there's absolutely nothing. But the terrain is still just amazingly pristine. Now, since then, as I said, the Preservation Trust has, in fact, this year, I believe, bought a small section where a Confederate battery was in action. The state of Mississippi has bought it's over 100 acres, maybe a little more by now. I believe the Department of Archives and History down there is working on some of that, too. So it's slowly becoming a preserved area, but there's a lot more needs to be done.
Is it much threatened these days? Is there development taking place nearby yet?
Well, not necessarily development in terms of Walmarts and gas stations and so on. What the main concern is, I believe, right now, and I get this from my friend Terry Winchell down in Vicksburg. I don't know how many of your listeners know about the big new Nissan plant that went in at Madison. It's just north of Jackson. And they tell me that people are buying up all kind of land. So many people have moved in there, just tons of jobs available. And they're buying land all over the place, build houses on. And part of the land that's been taken and houses have been built on the battlefield of Champion Hill for some of those folks. So it's certainly not prime real estate in terms of industry or anything, but slowly, chip by chip, it's being eroded away.
Sounds like Murfreesboro, sort of.
Well, Murfreesboro
battlefield.
It's
just houses
that's
going
a
up.
sad thing up there. The city is just mushrooming and taking a lot of that battlefield.
Yeah. Well, so if I were to go there, could I walk around with? Am I trespassing if I start walking around the battlefield? Is there any way to see it?
No, the majority of the roads are there. For instance, the Raymond Road is a state highway now. I believe it's 467, I think. You get up toward the crossroads and other places, and it's more little county roads, just little. They're paved, most of them, but but they're just little county roads, and you can figure out where you were or where you are. There are a few roads back in there that are not historic, and will kind of confuse some people touring now and then. But most of the roads are historic, and the crossroads and so on. Now you go into the interior. For instance, to Champion Hill itself and Lee's Ridge, where Lee held his position there, and right at Champion Hill, and all that's private, and they don't like you going back in there unless you get permission and so on,
right.
Which I always was careful to do. I don't like tramping around on somebody else's land without them knowing I'm there, you know.
No, that would not be a safe thing to do, certainly.
It's a good way to get shot. One of the most interesting stories, talking to Sid Champion down there, who's, I think he's Sid the Fifth. Sid the First, of course, was the Sid Champion who lived there in the Civil War. And he was telling me about his dad one day. Some guy had come by and wanted to go metal detecting out on the battlefield, and his dad told him no. His dad, by the way, has passed away now, but he told him no. And so the next day he's out there hunting on his own land, of course, and deer hunting. And he sees this same guy that he had told not to go out there relic hunting the day before, sees him coming through the metal detector. And, of course, the guy that's relic hunting doesn't know he's there. And so apparently Sid shot the head off of that metal detector with his rifle. And, of course, needless to say, that guy moved on along and probably has never been back. So
I would guess that would get the message across. So if somebody were to go out, then they would want to take a copy of your book. You have some photographs showing the ground as it exists today.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting aspects that Ted Savis wanted to do in this book, and I think he does in all of his books, to create a map and put photographs, kind of pictures with faces kind of thing, you know, not necessarily the faces, but the ground, and show some people where things are and what they look like. I mean, we've had a lot of good comments on that.
I thought that's a nice aspect of the book. Again, the maps are marvelous, and the photographs, the complements, it really give you a sense of what's going on there.
Right.
Let me challenge you with one thing about this book that I thought was, as I read it, I thought this is very much, and you say so in the introduction, traditional military history.
Right.
This is about the battle and nothing but the battle. Is there still an audience for that? I mean, we're seeing more, you know, the paradigm has evolved where that kind of book is no longer the standard kind of military writing, or at least
right.
That's not as popular. Or popular is not the right word. It's not as fashionable.
Well,
and I'm going to actually, I hear the music, so I'm going to cut you off to think about that question.
Okay.
And we'll come back in just a minute and talk about the state of military history and the writing of battle history with our guest today, Dr. Timothy B. Smith, Shiloh National Park Service Ranger and author of Champion Hill, Decisive Battle for Vicksburg. We'll come back and talk some more in just a minute on Civil War Talk Radio.